I'm a 22-year-old girl and this happened about a month ago. At the time, I was excited because I had just moved into my first real apartment. It wasn't much. Just a small one-bedroom place with peeling paint, creaky pipes, and neighbors who slammed doors late into the night. But it was mine. For the first time, I had my own space. My problem was that I had almost nothing to put in it. I had a bed and a rickety table my parents gave me, but I needed furniture, especially a couch. Something to make the living room feel less empty. I couldn't afford new stuff, so I did what most broke young people do. I went on Craigslist. At first, it was kind of fun scrolling through the ads. People were practically giving away couches, dressers, and tables, but most of it looked either disgusting or like it belonged in the 70s. Then, after about an hour, I found what looked like the perfect couch. It was beige, L-shaped, looked clean, and from the pictures, it was in almost perfect condition. The ad said, "Moving out, must sell SIP $200, contact by email only." It felt like a steal. I was skeptical, but I clicked. The email listed was mexicanpoppy66@hotmail.com. I remember hesitating. The name felt strange, creepy even. Something about the 666 put me off immediately. But I reminded myself that people choose dumb emails all the time. If the couch was as good as it looked, I didn't care what his email was, so I sent a message. "Hi, I'm interested in the couch. Would you take $150? He responded within 5 minutes. His reply was simple. "Yes, give me your address and I'll deliver it tonight." That's when the first alarm bell went off in my head. Why did he need my address right away? Usually sellers tell you where to pick it up, not the other way around. I wrote back saying I'd prefer to pick it up myself. He replied again, still within minutes, insisting that he'd bring it to me because he had a truck and it would be easier. The back and forth went on until I just stopped responding. Something about it didn't sit right. The next day, I woke up to another email from him. This time, he included his address. It was only about 15 minutes away from me. And I'll admit it, I was tempted. I needed a couch and the price was ridiculous. I stared at the address for a long time before finally convincing myself to go check it out. That was the biggest mistake of my life. The house was smaller than all the others on the block. The paint was peeling and the blinds in the windows were all crooked. When I rang the doorbell, a middle-aged man answered almost immediately. He was wearing a baseball cap pulled low over his forehead and gave me this huge smile that showed too many teeth. "You must be here for the couch," he said, stepping aside to let me in. Everything inside me told me not to walk through that door, but I did. The living room was dim, the blinds drawn even though it was daytime. The couch was there, but it looked nothing like the photos. The fabric was scuffed. There were small tears along the seams and it smelled faintly of mildew. I told him politely that I wasn't interested after all. That's when he stepped closer and put his hand on my shoulder. "You can have it for free," he said, his smile widening. "If you give me something in return." His hand lingered too long on my shoulder. My skin crawled. I pulled away and muttered a disgusted "no thanks." My heart was racing as I bolted for the door. He didn't try to stop me, but I could feel his eyes boring into my back as I left. I didn't even glance up when I got into my car. I just drove. My hands were shaking on the wheel the entire way home. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. That night, I was lying in bed watching TV when I heard it. At first, I thought it was just the upstairs neighbors, but then I muted the TV. The sound was distinct. Heavy footsteps, stomping up the wooden steps of my porch. My stomach dropped. I froze, listening. A second later, I heard the rattle of my front doorknob. Somebody was trying to get in. I tiptoed to the door and looked through the peephole, but by the time I got there, whoever it was had gone. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear over it. Then, from the back of the apartment, I heard it again, the squeak of the backyard gate opening. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911 with shaking hands. While I was on the call, I heard someone fiddling with the back doorknob. I whispered to the dispatcher what was happening. She told me officers were on their way and to stay hidden. I shouted through the door, "The police are on their way!" Everything went silent for a moment. Then I heard the gate creak shut again. By the time the cops arrived, the backyard was empty. They searched the area but found nothing. I tried to explain about the man and the couch, but they couldn't do much. I hadn't technically bought anything and no crime had been committed, yet I didn't sleep that night or the next. For weeks afterward, I kept imagining I heard noises outside. Sometimes I thought I saw a shadow lingering by the gate, but when I checked, no one was there. I'm almost certain it was him, the man from the house. He must have followed me home. Maybe he had been planning it from the moment I sent that first email. It's been a month and nothing has happened since, but I still can't sleep without every light in my apartment on. I still check the locks 3 times before bed, and I'll never ever use Craigslist again, because I know he's still out there. And if he found me once, what's stopping him from finding me again? I was searching for a car for my son's 18th birthday when this happened. It was supposed to be a gift, something reliable he could drive to school and later to college. I didn't have much to spend, $4,000 at most, but I was determined to get him something decent. At first, I searched the usual websites, cars.com, eBay Motors, Car Gurus. Everything in my price range looked like junk. The only place left to try was Craigslist, and while I knew the reputation it had, I figured I could handle myself. After a week of checking listings, I found what looked like the deal of a lifetime. A 2003 Toyota Camry, 67,000 miles, clean title, no accidents, $3,500 cash. I almost couldn't believe it. A Camry with that mileage could easily go another 100,000 miles. The ad had no photos except for one shot of the exterior, but the car looked okay from what I could see. The seller listed his name as Bob with a phone number. I called him. He sounded normal. His voice was calm, friendly, almost grandfatherly. He assured me the car was in great condition and that I'd be very happy with it. We arranged to meet the following evening at his place, about 10 miles away. When I pulled up to the address, my first thought was how isolated the property was. It was a tiny house on a dirt road, far enough from its neighbors that if you screamed, no one would hear you. The yard was littered with junk, rusting tools, broken chairs, and an old swing set with chains that creaked in the wind. But what struck me most was the garage. It was open, and inside were piles upon piles of car parts, engines stacked against the wall, axles, mufflers, pieces of vehicles in every direction, but no Toyota Camry. I parked, grabbed the envelope of cash I'd brought, and walked up to the house. The front doorbell was missing, so I knocked. Nothing. I knocked again. Louder. Still nothing. After about 5 minutes of waiting, I decided to call Bob. That's when I heard it, the faint ringing of a cell phone coming from inside the house. My stomach tightened. It was his number. His phone was inside, ringing, which meant he was home, but he wasn't answering the door. I told myself not to panic. Maybe he was in the bathroom, or maybe he didn't hear me. I walked to one of the windows and peered inside. The house was dim, but I could make out a dining room with an old-fashioned oak table and floral wallpaper. Nothing unusual. Then my eyes shifted. Standing at the back door of the house in the shadows was a figure. My first thought was that it was Bob, just standing there looking outside. But something about the way the figure didn't move. It was wrong. I knocked lightly on the glass of the window. "Bob?" I called, no response. The figure didn't turn, didn't twitch, just stared through the glass door into the backyard. My chest tightened. I decided to walk around to the back of the house. The yard wasn't fenced in. It was wide open, surrounded by tall grass and thick trees. As I approached the back porch, I saw the figure more clearly, and my blood ran cold. It wasn't a man at all. It was a human body, taxidermied, standing upright, dressed in old clothes, its face expressionless. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over myself. My first instinct was to run, but I forced myself to look again just to be sure. It wasn't a mannequin. I could see the texture of real skin, stretched unnaturally over stiff features. I didn't want to believe it, but my gut screamed the truth. That thing had once been alive. I sprinted around the house and back toward my car. My hands fumbled for the keys as I shoved them into the ignition. That's when I looked back. The blinds to the window I had peeked into earlier were now closed, all except for 2 slats bent open just enough for someone to watch me. My throat tightened. Whoever was inside the house had been watching me the entire time. I slammed the car into reverse and peeled out of the driveway, dirt kicking up behind me. I didn't stop until I was back on the main road, heart hammering against my ribs. I didn't call the police right away. I told myself I must have been mistaken, that maybe it was a mannequin, a weird collector's item. But deep down, I knew what I had seen. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that lifeless face staring out the back door. The next day, I decided I couldn't just ignore it. I called the local police station and reported what I'd seen. The officer on the phone was polite but skeptical. He said they'd send someone to check it out. 2 days later, I got a follow-up call. They told me the house was empty. No one by the name of Bob lived there. No car, no furniture, nothing but piles of scrap. When I asked about the body, the officer paused. Then he told me they hadn't found anything unusual inside. I didn't believe him. I could tell by his tone he was holding something back. It's been months since that night. I still don't know who Bob really was or what his intentions were. But I keep thinking about all those car parts in the garage. About the fact that there was never a Camry. About the body in the house that I know wasn't just my imagination. And the most terrifying thought of all, what if I hadn't left? What if I had stayed, walked inside, waited just a little longer? Would I have ended up like that thing at the back door? A lifeless shell propped up forever, staring blankly into the backyard. Sometimes late at night, I wake up convinced I can hear the faint ringing of a cell phone, somewhere in the dark. And every time I do, I wonder if Bob ever stopped looking for someone to add to his collection. I was 19 when this happened, and it's something that still makes my stomach twist every time I think about it. I wanted a new phone, specifically an iPhone 5. At the time, it was a big deal and everyone seemed to have one except me. I was stuck with a cracked old Android that barely held a charge. I didn't have much money, so I went to Craigslist, thinking I could find someone upgrading who just wanted to get rid of their old phone cheap. Sure enough, after a few days of scrolling, I found a listing. iPhone 5, mint condition, $200. Need gone today. It sounded too good to be true, but I messaged anyway. The guy responded within the hour. He said he had upgraded to a 5C and just wanted quick cash. He seemed normal, polite even, and suggested we meet in a public place to exchange. That put me at ease. We agreed to meet in a Dunkin' Donuts parking lot at 10 p.m. That night, I brought my younger brother with me. He knew way more about phones than I did, and I didn't want to get scammed with a broken one. We pulled into the parking lot and spotted a black Honda Civic with 2 guys inside. They got out as we parked. Both were tall, broad, wearing hoodies despite it being warm outside. They didn't say much, just handed me the phone. It looked perfect. Not a scratch. My brother popped my SIM card in and tested it. Everything seemed to work fine. When it came time to pay, the guy who handed me the phone suddenly said, "Actually, it's $250, not $200. I had brought $250 with me, but something about the change rubbed me wrong. I told him I only had $200. He looked annoyed, but eventually took it. They got back in their car. We got in ours. For a moment, it seemed like the deal was done, but they didn't leave. My brother noticed it first. "Why are they still here?" he whispered. I shrugged it off. Maybe they were just hanging around. But as soon as I pulled out of the lot, their Civic pulled out too. At first, I tried to ignore it. But every turn I took, they followed. Left, they went left. Right, they went right. Always close, headlights glaring in the rear view. My chest tightened. My palms were slick on the wheel. "They're following us," my brother finally said, his voice shaking. I didn't answer. I just pressed harder on the gas. I tried to lose them by taking side streets, sharp turns, even blowing through a yellow light. But every time I checked the mirror, they were still there. By now, my heart was racing so fast I thought it might burst. "Pull over," my brother said. "No way," I snapped. "If I pull over, we're dead." We drove like that for what felt like hours, me weaving through traffic, them always close behind. Finally, at an intersection, the light turned red. Without thinking, I floored it and shot through. My brother screamed at me, calling me crazy, but when I looked back, the Civic hadn't followed. I exhaled so hard I nearly collapsed. My whole body was shaking as I finally pulled into our driveway. We sat in the car for a long time before going inside. My brother kept insisting we should call the cops, but I told him there wasn't much to tell. They hadn't actually done anything, just followed us. I thought it was over. I was wrong. Later that night, after everyone else had gone to bed, I was still awake, messing with the new phone. I was setting up contacts when I heard it, the slam of 2 car doors outside. I froze. Slowly, I crept to the window. My heart dropped into my stomach. Parked across the street was the same black Honda Civic. The 2 guys were already halfway up our driveway. I stumbled back and rushed to wake my dad. In a panic, I explained everything as quickly as I could. The deal, the following, the car outside. He didn't hesitate. He grabbed a baseball bat and crouched behind the front door. Then came the knock. Loud, aggressive. "Open up," one of them shouted. His voice was deep, angry. My dad yelled back through the door, "Get the hell off my property." There was a pause. Then the other voice said, "Open this door or we'll shoot the lock off." My heart stopped. I scrambled to call Joe, our neighbor 2 houses down. He was a police officer. I told him what was happening, my voice cracking with fear. "Stay inside. Don't open the door," he told me. "I'm on my way." As I hung up, everything went still. Then, PF'd. A muffled thump like a car backfiring. But then I saw it. A bullet hole in the door. Just inches from my dad's head. They had actually fired. My dad dove away, yelling for us to stay down. My brother and I crouched behind the couch, shaking uncontrollably. Outside, I could hear Joe shouting, "Police! Drop the weapon!" I peeked just enough to see through the side window. Joe had his gun drawn, flashlight beam cutting across the lawn. The 2 men froze. For a moment, I thought they'd fire back. Instead, they slowly raised their hands. Joe rushed forward, yelling at them to get on the ground. My dad ran out to help. Together, they managed to subdue the men until backup arrived. The whole street was lit up with flashing lights within minutes. When it was all over, I finally learned the truth. Those guys weren't selling a phone. They were running a scam, luring people in with cheap electronics, then following them home to rob them. But this time, something went wrong. Maybe they thought I had more money. Maybe they didn't like that I shorted them $50 either way. They had planned to get into our house that night. And if Joe hadn't lived 2 doors down, I don't think I'd be alive to tell this story. It's been years since then. But I still can't buy anything off Craigslist without feeling my chest tighten. I still remember that bullet hole in the door. The sound of the silenced gunshot. The way those 2 men walked up my driveway like they owned it. I can't even look at a black Honda Civic without my pulse spiking. And worst of all, sometimes late at night I lie awake imagining what would have happened if Joe hadn't answered his phone. I imagine the door being kicked in, the sound of heavy footsteps, the muffled pop of another shot, this time not missing, and the horrifying truth that for a cheap phone, I almost lost my entire family.